of our discussion, and I'm very proud and honored to introduce to you Alvah Beander, who is a certified personal property appraiser specializing in African American and African diaspora art. Upon completing the requirements pending of senior level appraiser in the American Society of Appraisers, she will become the first African American awarded the designation in African art. Alvah was the owner of Savannah Collection, which specialized in international art of indigenous peoples. She was a co-owner and manager of Discoveries, which specialized in Egyptian and sub-Saharan African art. Both galleries were located in Old Town Alexandria. She is a frequent lecturer and has presented at the International Monetary Fund, American Society of Appraisers, the Phillips Collection, and the Congressional Black Caucus, the Embassy of Ghana, the October Gallery Expo, Howard University, Georgia State University, Winston-Salem State University, the National Black Art Festival, Legacy Fine Arts Show, and Corcoran College of Art and Design. There are three highlights of her career as a consultant, and that being at the National Museum of African American History and Culture, their Plan for Action Presidential Commission. She also served as an appraiser and consultant to the PBS series, The Rise and Fall of Jim Crow, Johnny Lee Gray paintings. In the fall of 2007, Alvah co-chaired the steering committee for the first public art project in Fairfax County, Art in the Pages. In addition, she is also the appraiser for the Executive Office of the United States of America, the White House. The accolades go on for pages. She's very humble. She actually only sent me a short paragraph, and then I researched and found additional information. And do you want me to do the Christmas part of it, or would you like to share that? Okay. All right. She is a widow. She has one son, my nephew, very beloved nephew. Her interests are in Bali, Dogon, Egyptian, and Aboriginal art. She loves traveling, reading, fencing, yoga, Pilates, dancing, swimming, world, new age music, and boating. I present to you Alvah Beander. So my first question to you, Alvah, is how did you become an appraiser?
I wanted to major in anthropology. And I went off to Bennett College, and I came home, my dad said, you know, what's your major? I said, anthropology. It's in 1969. And my father says, anthropology. And where are you going to work? So I said, well, that lady, Margaret Mead, she worked. My dad said, for who? Well, I didn't know. So my dad said, go back to that college, get a real major. So I go back to Bennett College, I come back the next thing. He says, when are you going to major? I said, interior design. My father said, how many interior designers you know that's black? I said, none. He said, go back to that school, get a real major. So I go back to the school, I come back and I said, okay, I'm majoring in political science pre-law. Now you got to remember my father's Trinidadian, and so political, everything gets him going. Yes, my daughter's going to be a political scientist. So any of you who have that degree know why we got it. What else, just what we're going to do with it, I don't know. But my father loved the word political science and law altogether. So I was really destined for law school, but didn't, well, I got accepted and decided to go into business instead. I was an importer, exporter to Egypt. We were importing the cartouches that Smithsonian now sells, your name in hieroglyphics, because I knew how to read hieroglyphics from being 9 years old. We ran a store, I don't know, 10 years, 2 stores, and I was very happily making a lot of money. It was in the 80s, it was great. Things were really easy then for business people. But as I was doing this, I would talk to my mentor, Ted Totley, Galerie Myrtis. Ted Totley had been with he had been assistant to Alan Greenspan and been in the State Department. And he said, daughter, you can't just make money off of culture and not know it well enough. I mean, I knew enough from my dad, but I had stopped the studying, of the work. So I was just, importing, making money, going back and forth, doing my thing, having fun. And no, daughter, read this book. So my son, I tell you, I stopped by to say howdy Ted. I have to give a report on what I read this week, what I learned from what I read, and he was constantly giving me books. Then he started taking me to the embassies and introducing me to a world that I never knew before. He was like my father. By then my father had passed, and so Ted totally was very generous with his time, his knowledge, and in himself. So this was all going very well. I was learning. The store was going great. And my husband became ill, and my first obligation is always to my family. And I wanted to make sure I was taking good enough care of him and my wonderful son. To do that, having a store was very hard. You have hours, you have to be there. I could never get enough help or right help. So I'm sitting in the hospital room. My husband had been in the hospital that year. And I say this for caretakers. I hope caretakers in the room and hear me. 67 times that year. And I'm sitting there and thinking, I can't get that store open and keep it. This is not working. I'm reading The Millionaire Next Door, and it has, be an appraiser. Appraisers can make money. I was like, wow, well, I've been doing that anyway, so why did I do that? So then I looked into the requirements for an appraiser and started the certification program through George Washington University, basically so I could have flexibility and time to be with my family, and of course make a living as well. The steps to becoming an appraiser, the steps never end. We're heavily regulated, and we're becoming more and more regulated each day. And I just want to take one moment to say to all the clients I have in the room, my sincere apologies for late reports. You know who all you are, because they all come up to me, how can I be speaking and I don't have the report? See Janice, she has the schedule, or she's going to have the schedule, but it's been a crazy year for us. A lot of times, in the market, you think one thing is just that thing, but it affects everything. We are appraisers, and we're in with real estate appraisers. In the 80s, when the S&Ls went out, it was because of appraisers. That's when Congress decided to create the Appraisal Foundation to oversee appraisers. So, we're getting new things every day. They change them. I was just at a workshop, where they showed us 150 slides. The lady gave us 5 hours of lecture. I'm writing like crazy. At the end, she says, this is the IRS, she says, yeah, we're not sure which parts we're going to do or not, but you need to know all of it. We might change this, but we'll let you know as we go. Okay. So, and then we call and say, we have a question. And they said, well, we're still looking at that. I'm not sure if we're going to, do that or not. So it's been very hard, because now the mortgage situation with the bad mortgages, again, appraisers were involved. So every time that happens with them, it happens to us. We little personal property appraisers. There are 2 appraisal groups that come under the Appraisal Foundation founded by Congress. The AAA, they're primarily in New York, and they do only personal property. I'm in the ASA, which has multiple disciplines. So we got machine and equipment guys, we got armory guys, guns, business and evaluations. We have decorative arts and residential content, which is really a big area, because I'm going to talk about fine art here, but most of you also have furniture that you might need to be considering in terms of inventory. Many of you have clocks, watches that are appraisable. Janice Lee here, who has been just a jewel for me, was an apprentice appraiser for me for 3 years. Janice, please stand. Everybody knows Janice as a client, because I have been a Lone Ranger until Janice. When you see Janice and I, you're looking at almost all, I'll tell you all the African American appraisers, because I want to shout out everybody, because we're so few. In AAA, Michael Chisholm, Dr. Montgomery, Eric Hanks out in California, Pamela Brown, Halima Taha, Garbo Hearn, and Mark Dabney. They're in AAA. In ASA, Janice and I, Marshall Grisby, son of Eugene Grisby, Diane Deakins Carr in Chicago, and Donna Ray Thompson in New Jersey. And that is the appraisers. That is the African American appraisers in the country that are in the organization.
Out of a total of how many?
Oh my God.
Thousands, right? Well, let me say this too. An appraisal business, when I came in, it was 6,000 of us. It's down to 2,500 because of the requirements and the audits process that we go through. I mean, it's a lot to take. You're taking it from your clients and the association. So, you know, a lot of people, they don't want the liability of it. We now have to sign off that if we overinflate by 10%, we can go to jail for 10 years. Now, in a piece of art, if it's even $1,000 piece of art, that's $100. So that's why, yeah, I'm always looking those reports back over again. Janice will tell you, you know, I obsess with making sure that I can do due diligence and make sure that I have my numbers. And we'll talk about what the problem is for African American art and the infrastructure when I go through this quickly as to the areas in personal property, African sculpture. There's 3 of us, and I'm going to be the black lady. And the other guy, one guy's 92, and the other guy, he kind of does it part-time. Antique and collectible glass. These are categories. As I go down them, think about what you have, and you know, think about, is that something else you need to look at? Because it's not just fine art that you need to be concerned about. Antiques and collectible glass, antique firearms, armory and military, antique furniture, antiques and decorative art, Asian art, audiovisual media recordings, automotive specialties, books, clocks, fine art. And by the way, there is no specialty under fine art for African American. So any fine art appraiser can take a look at African American art. They generally don't necessarily want to. And it's not, you know what, my colleagues, let me tell you, and maybe we should just say this, my colleagues can go to a book or 5 books on any given artist. And they have the ArtNet database. They go on, put the artist name, every artist comes up. We have none of that. I have to call all the gallery owners. Thank you, Norm Parrish, Tim Davis, Myrtis, all over the country, Stella Jones. I got to hunt down a price. And I have to make sure that I can justify it. And so it makes it a very complicated arena. And I've actually, and I think, one day with one of my clients, I said, I think I'm not doing African American anymore. It's just a lot of work. And for the level of liability it puts us in for making a mistake, you know, I do Aboriginal art, I do African art. It's none of these considerations. Everything is there for me. Fine arts photography, firearms, Native American art, coins, Oriental rugs, pre-Columbian art, residential content, Denise, silver and metal, sports is a big area, textiles, and fine wine. So you go through, the first thing you do, the first step is you have to take 4 classes, POV classes. They last about 3 days, and then you have to test for about 5 hours. After you finish doing that, then you take the ethics test. After that, you take the use path. This is the use path. This is what we live and die by. This is set up by Congress. These are my rules. So each report I'm doing, I have to go through this and what we call the Royal Blue Book of requirements. As you can see, it's lined up, yeah. So, you know, a lot of people see us as part of like the art history world, and we're not. We're business. We're totally asset management, asset allocation. After going through this, then you can go for your accreditation in a particular specialty. You have to work at least 2 to 5 years to get each of them. and which is kind of an oxymoron because how are you going to get clients if you don't have the? Fortunately for me, thank you, my clients in here. You know, I had a lot. People were waiting for me. I didn't know this. I was in a position I had no clue until I stepped into the door because I only was going to do African because that's, you know, that was my background. But people moved me forward into, you got to do this. We don't have anybody. You know, I hold up people like Betty Penn, Dr. Harvey. I'm gonna get that report. Anita. I mean, I look around this room and I almost want to cry because, you know, they've been very patient with me and very supportive of me that you got to do this because who else? You know, that's where we are right now. And I'm actually very fine with. I'm going to be the first. I'm going to be president of my my chapter and moving into like the umbrella organization in leadership roles. I'm only going to lead. I'm only going to break barriers. And Janice is going to come behind me and do the work and bring others because it's too big you know, I'm learning. Just get in there. You know, just get the first president. And then, you know, then everybody else know they can be it, you know. So with the amount of work that it takes to do it, you know, it's going to be the only thing I can do is just be the first.
So, what should I expect if I come to an appraiser? What is the process for a client seeking your services?
The first thing we need to do is we kind of qualify you on the phone to make sure that, you know, we're talking about art that's, in quote, appraisable. Because, you know, all art is valuable, but all art is not going to be reasonable for us to charge what we do to do the work. So artists, we need to have artists that have a market. It's that simple. Yeah, they need to have a market. So we qualify you in terms of the pieces that you have, and then we have to find the intended use. We're driven by the intended use. And so when you call us, you say, I might want to sell, I might want to put it on my shirts, or I might want to give it to my kids. And that makes us crazy. We have to know because there are about 22 values that we can use out of the blue book to do your project. And we have to use the right value. So if you say you're going to donate it and I write you a donation report, you cannot use that for your insurance. And then, of course, the insurance, and let me just break down insurance and charitable donation because it makes it easy. Insurance, you're looking for the highest and best value for replacement. Something happened to your piece. I want to put a price on there that will cover you if you have a loss. Not only for today, but a few years out. I can't do much forecasting because we're so tight with the way we do that, but I have a reasonable amount I can take it to looking at the economic climate. Charitable donation, they do not want your highest and best use. They want the lowest price, because this is the government, this is the IRS. They want auction prices. So that's why the Swans auction really is setting what the government will accept for pricing for African American art. They're the only auction. They want auction prices. For years they kind of talked around it and said we want, prices can be like this, but now they're actually almost requiring auction prices. Many of our artists are not in the auction. So after we decided to find out what the intended use is, we come out, we catalog your work, take pictures, do the measurements, condition. We find things a lot of times that people haven't noticed, like your piece is foxing, and we bring that to your attention. And then we do what's called a USPAP compliant report, and we try to do that in a timely manner. Sometimes we don't get it so timely, but we give you a USPAP, according to this, compliant report to give to your to either the insurance company or the lawyers. We deal with a lot of estate lawyers. I think Larry Frazier was here. Larry Frazier is an intricate part. Is he here? Yes. Yeah. And I'm trying to do a little calling out of names because you do need to kind of know who the professionals are, because to an extent, professionals deal with professionals. And it's not just in the African American art world, it's in the art world. Larry Frazier has a lot of experience with dealing with art as a asset, with dealing with estates and with collectors. It is handled quite differently than what your lawyer would do with other assets. So if you're not going to use Larry, I always tell my clients, talk to Larry first, and he can at least guide you in the right direction of what you need to be doing. And the other thing is, a lot of lawyers, they know what you have. You may not. They do.
How do you determine value?
Value is determined by the Blue Book. The best way, or the easiest way to determine value, though, is there's this thing called the Getty ID. And I think can you see, in that black bag right there, the Getty ID? Yeah. The Getty ID, you can go online and download it. It's from the Getty Institute in California. Pretty much each of the things that we have to look at to catalog your piece are the areas in which value comes from. Value may come from, it's not in there, it's loose sheet. Value may come from the size of the piece. Sam Gilliam, huge drape pieces, if you had a big drape, the price is probably going to be more than a small drape. But some miniatures go for as much as large pieces in other categories. So it's so many things that you have to look at, and that's why you use the appraiser or my type, because the considerations are not just what it's very complex. It's too even hard to think about when I think about it. Is that it could be like, this artist was great during this period, but not in another period. You talk about Delaney. The first thing I ask them when client says they have a Delaney, I say, oh, is it yellow? Because the yellow pieces go for higher than the other, because that was written about more. One of the problems is that the art is not being written about by academicians, and so supporting prices and historical content of the artist is very difficult. This is the Getty ID, and like I say, it's online. And okay, the type of object. Okay, in paintings, on canvas goes for more than on paper. Limited editions, more than open prints. But it depends, because if you do vintage posters, there's high prices for a lot of vintage posters. So all of this depends. None of this is exact, and that's what we're always working with. The material, is it oil? Is it watercolor? Is it cast bronze? Those enter into what the price would be. The size, the title. Sometimes the title becomes a part, because sometimes, like, we work with the History Factory, which is a company that does business histories. I know that sounds funny, but when McDonald's has his 100th anniversary, you see all those pictures of when they started, the owner, the founders. Well, there's a company that does that, and so if you titled it, you did a picture of McDonald and you titled it McDonald, then when they search for things, they'll find that, as opposed to an untitled piece. So title does come into play. The date, again, what period it was made in. The Harlem Renaissance for us is the highest and best value, except for now. The contemporary African and the Sam Gilliams of the world, are resetting the market for us.
All right, so the last question is, as an appraiser, what are some of the strategies you would recommend for collectors to build value in their collection?
Well, the first thing is I just want to say, I hate this. I'm just going to say it. I hate it. I just buy what I like.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a level of that makes sense. But I like a $20 million home, but I can't pay for the landscaper to come out and landscape it. You can have both. You can buy what you love and have value too. I say to go to your highest and best that you are able to do. I mean, I believe totally in working with professionals. And I'm not just saying this because some professionals are in the room or invited me to be here, but they will help you to get, you may have holes in your collection, not holes, but you have voids. We actually call them holes, but there can be voids in your collection. I love that. Is it Robbie? Yeah, Robbie. Some of the best collectors are the collections we've seen, is like the Hewitts. They collected their neighbors. You know, the artists around them. They were site specific. So collecting Baltimore artists, you know, it's a great theme for a collection. I talked to Paul, and Paul and I were friends. Paul liked everything and he could afford to get everything. So if you can do that, then that's fine. Some people like Bob Steele, you know, he has a fabulous collection. They're all on paper. You know, but now, you know, they're considered one of the top collections because there was a theme. So you need to kind of collect almost like a museum with a strategy. You know, you might look at your collection and see some pieces that you thought you loved back in the day, but now they're just not working. You know, maybe trade them in. You know, trade them in and then get somebody to work with you. Because the other thing is, when we come out, you know, she is a dealer or me as an appraiser, I can see what your collection is. I can tell you what it is. You know, sometimes you're not seeing it in the same way because you're just collecting it piece by piece. But when I come in, I know what you are thinking. And sometimes you get off track. But pretty much, most people have a theme. It's already there. I have a client that has, like, you know, the color green. It's almost in everything. She never saw it. I said, yeah, you like green. She said, no, I don't wear green. That's exactly what she said. She said, I don't wear green. It's like, yeah, but your paintings are green. Can I tell you a little bit? He does collect the masters, and he likes Washington artists. And we are in a wonderful place to get Washington artists. You know, Alvah Thomas, Mayhew Jones, they're all here. Pieces are all around here that you can get artists that were from here. Because the other thing that we believe, and this is not just an opinion, I have actually done a study, the art market is moving out of New York for African American art to Washington, D.C. if we allow for it and we work to make sure that happens. That's it.
All right, well, we're going to bring all of the panelists back up front, and we're going to open the floor now for Q&A.